Now, in this video, I just want to give you some more detail on the project associated with this module. What you know already is that you've got to develop a React app for either the Movies fan app by extending that, or develop an app for some other API, web API that you are aware of, whether that be the point of interest web API or some other API. So there are really kind of two choices, either the Movies fan app approach or some other app that you develop from the ground up yourselves. What you will submit to me is a GitHub repo, and that repo will need to have a README, as all repos should. Now, I am providing a template for that README, and it's really important that you follow that template because I will use the README when I am actually assessing the project. As well, there will be online demos probably around the beginning of September, and we will schedule those when it comes closer to the date. Now, in terms of how I kind of assess the project, I've kind of defined what I'm calling grade bands. There are 3 grade bands. I'm just labeling them as good, excellent, and outstanding with the percentages there documented. So I just want to kind of talk through those bands and give you an idea as to what I'm looking for in each of them. So if we take the 40 to 60% grade band, and really what I'm trying to assess there is that you have a good understanding of the foundations of React. So my kind of theme is that it's a foundation app that you're submitting. From a UI perspective or an app perspective, you know, the app will support some user interaction, whatever the nature of that user action is, you know, selecting from a drop-down menu, entering something into a text box, clicking a button, and those interactions will cause whatever is being displayed to change. Hence, the app is dynamic. We know all about this stuff. So obviously, I'm not looking for a kind of a static app. There has to be some sort of dynamic behavior supported within it. From a navigation point of view, I'm saying there that roughly anyway, there should be about 3 views making up your app. Now, obviously, if you decide to extend the Movies fan app, then we're talking about 3 additional views over and above what you've already developed in the labs. If you're developing your own app from the ground up, then 3 or so views would be fine to get into this grade band. From kind of a technical point of view, on the React side, you know, you'd have to have a mixture of stateful and stateless components that have to be evidence of unidirectional data flow, data down, action up, and really all of those 2 items there, they're obviously going to be present anyway if your app is interactive and supports and dynamic in nature. So you can't really avoid that. From a routing point of view, I'm saying there that at least one of your routes should be parameterized. The others can be static if you wish. You'd have to have used the core hooks, which are the use state and use effect hooks in your code. You'd have to have some of your components implemented in Storybook, or have some Storybook implementation for them. Doesn't have to be exhaustive, just some evidence that you have actually used Storybook. Now, I won't know whether you used Storybook at the beginning of your design process or whether you completed the Storybook stuff at the end. I don't care about that, but just as long as you have some evidence of having used Storybook in the project is fine by me. Now, the last thing I'm saying there at the bottom is from the web API point of view, I'm saying that there should be 2 endpoints. Now, what do I mean by an endpoint? If you think of the Movies fan app that we rolled out in the labs, I would say that we used 4 of TMDB's endpoints. The 4 endpoints being the discovery endpoint, that's the one that returned us a list of movies. The movie endpoint, that's the one that gave us detailed information on a movie. The genre endpoint gave us a list of all the genres possible. And the reviews endpoint gave us the reviews data associated with a movie. Okay, so there were 4 endpoints that we used. Now, if you decide to extend the movies fan app, then you would need to use 2 other new endpoints in addition to those 4. And in fact, in the last slide in this set of slides, I'm actually giving you some other interesting endpoints that TMDB provides, and you can look up those and maybe use those in your implementation. If you're developing your own app from the ground up, then 2 endpoints from whatever API you're using would be fine in order to get into this good grade band. So that's kind of the scale and magnitude of what I would be looking for in the good band. In the excellent band, then maybe what you might think about is adding user authentication. Now, what I mean by custom there is, like, normally user authentication has some backend support associated with it. In other words, the user's username and password and their profile might be stored in the database. Now, that's you won't have to go to that extent. You could actually just hard code a small little array of valid username password combinations into your JavaScript, the React JavaScript, and that would be fine. So probably you're going to have an auth context in your React implementation, and in that auth context code, you could just have hard coded a small little array that contains username password combinations that are valid, and then you would, when the user tries to log in, then it would be validated against that array. So that's what I mean by custom there. I'm saying that you would have a mixture of public and protected pages or views. Now, again, I've explained what I mean by those in the lectures and in the labs, and it's fine. And I've given you some code behind it, and it's fine if you want to reuse that code by all means, and just stitch it into your own code. What else? I'm saying that from a navigation point of view, you know, you're going to have about maybe 5 or so views or pages making up your project. That would be 5 additional pages if it's the movies fan app. If it's your own app from the ground up, it's kind of 5 or 6 pages in total. There would be a site header and maybe even a site footer, maybe not, but definitely a site header. Again, I've provided you with a site header implementation, and you're free to reuse that if you wish. Now, the next one there is data hyperlinking. What do I mean by data hyperlinking? Well, if we go back to the site header, typically in a site header, you're going to have navigation links to go to other pages, but they tend to be static kind of links. But you can also have hyperlinks in the body of a page that brings you to other parts of the app. If you think, for example, supposing I had an app now for an academic kind of context, and maybe one of the pages in my app displays detailed information on a particular course, and on that page would be a list of modules taught on the course, and those module titles would actually be clickable, and by clicking on them I'm brought to a page that shows me detailed information on the module. So those clickable links are what I mean by data hyperlinks. On the module page, there might be the name of the lecturer, and that might be clickable, and that will bring you to the lecturer's profile page. On the lecturer's profile page, there might be a list of all of the modules that the lecturer teaches. Those module titles would be clickable and would bring you to the relevant module page. So you kind of get the idea that you're navigating around the app by means of what I'm calling these data hyperlinks. In the movies fan app, you might remember, for example, a movie's image was clickable, and that brought us to the movie's detail page. Well, the clickable image is another example of what I'm calling data hyperlinking there. As well, I'm saying that maybe your implementation is actually going to have a web form, whatever the nature of the data they're entering on the web form, that depends on the context of your app. So in the Movies Fan app, we use the web form to allow a user to submit their own movie review. So you have some sample code there that you can reuse and extend or refactor it to your own needs, but at least to have some sort of maybe web form support. Now, typically, when you have a web form associated with a React app and user clicks the submit button, typically the data that they've entered is actually sent back to the web API. And maybe from there then stored in the database. Now, we're not going to have that, obviously. So it's fine that the data that was entered on the web form can be stored locally within the React code by using this kind of stub API idea that I used in the labs. So it's fine to reuse that kind of structure if you wish. As well, I suppose that thing at the very bottom there, the styling in your app should be quite good, even though I didn't cover styling at all, but you've done a lot on web styling, in other words, CSS. You've done a lot on that already in other modules. So evidence of reusing that kind of knowledge would be good. From a React point of view, you're going to have maybe React contexts. Maybe you're going to use the use reducer hook. Again, we've covered all of these in the lectures and labs. Some custom hooks, maybe some composition pattern usage. From a routing point of view, maybe you might use one or two of the advanced routing features. You don't have to hit all of these bullet points now. It's just the majority of them is going to get you into the 60-80 bracket. A little bit more from the storybook side. And from a web API point of view, I'm saying maybe 2 to 4 endpoints would be exercised by your React app. So that's kind of the scale of what I would like to get in order to move you into the 60 to 80 bracket. And then the last band, really, as the theme kind of suggests there, what I'm really looking for is that you have done some additional kind of reading around React itself, and you have come across aspects of React that I didn't cover at all in the lectures, and that, there's plenty of them there. I'm giving you a list of suggestions that you might take on board. Again, I'm not saying that you have to hit each of these bullet points in order to get into this band. I wouldn't expect that at all, actually. Maybe 2 or 3 might be as much as you could manage. But there are lots of options there for you, and really it's a case of just Googling these things and finding out about them and how to apply them to your own project. I mean, some of them are applicable to any kind of project. For example, the cloud deployment one there, if you actually want to deploy your React app to a cloud service, I'm suggesting Zeit now is a very good cloud service that you could look at in terms of automated testing. You might look at the Cypress framework and so on. So you can pick whichever of those you might be interested in. And at the very bottom, I'm just saying other. So there may be something else that you've come across when you're reading around React and you've applied it. What's really important, obviously, is that you make sure you include that in the README. And in fact, when you look at the template README that I provide, the last section of it is independent learning. And it's really important that you document there what independent learning you have achieved and how you've applied that, where you have applied that in your project implementation. As well, I should say that it's possible, if you actually happen to hit one of these bullet points, but in terms of the rest of your implementation, it may actually be kind of back at this level here, I will still give you marks for the independent learning that you've done. Okay, so that's I'm kind of flexible in that sense. The last slide in this set of slides only relates to people who are considering extending the Movies Fan app. And I'm just giving you some other TMDB endpoints there that you might find useful. So I won't go through all of them, but for example, this one here, that one will return a list of cast members and crew associated with a movie. In other words, the people associated with a particular movie in terms of cast and crew. The second one will give you detailed information about a particular cast member or crew member. This one gives you, what does it give you? Recommended movies for movie. Oh yeah, it will give you kind of related movies to a movie. So maybe you've clicked on the movie's detail page, and there might be a link to get a list of other kind of recommended movies associated with that movie. And there are some other ones as well down at the bottom of the page. So there's lots of choices there in terms of TMDB. Okay, that's it really. If there is anything else that you need clarity on, then just reach out on Slack and I'll try and address them. Thanks, bye.